Hi, I'm Rob Hurst and I developed FertileFibre, peat-free organic growing medium. FertileFibre came about because our nursery, the cottage herbery, needed another growing medium. We'd been growing herbs since 1976 and we'd used, up until that point, the waste from our hop picking machine, composted for over a number of years, and then we would use that to grow the plants in. By the late 80s, we were growing a lot more plants and we didn't have enough of the composted hop waste. So we looked for other brands. We tried different organic ones, but nothing gave us the consistency and gave us the growth that we needed to sell our plants at shows. So we decided that we would look to make our own mix. We spent 3 years sourcing coir, and substrates, nutrients, and all the things that you need to make a growing medium. Over the 3 years, we learned a lot. We learned about pH, moisture levels, carbon ratios, elements, but the main thing we learned a lot about was the fascinating life of a coconut. They're used for many different things. And then we found that the coir is actually a waste product that a lot of the factories that process coconuts would love to get rid of. So, and we knew a lot about coir because our hop waste that we had been using was 50% coir because of the string, which is a main part of the coconut industry. The hops, that's what they grow up in the yards. And that had gone through the machine, been chopped up, but that had then been composted. This was buying coir direct. We then decided that we'd have to test it. We tested it on our plants in the nursery and we used different blends, different nutrients. We tried all sorts of things. Finally, we got the best mix that we thought because we needed one mix to do a range of plants. As it is now, FertileFibre does lots of different mixes, but at that point, we just wanted one thing to grow our plants in. That was when we realized that up to that point, we had been using compost, but we were now made a growing medium. So compost, growing medium, why are they different? Compost is a group of organic materials. They can be anything from sticks, grass cuttings, food products, all put together in a pile, in a heap, in a controlled drums, and then once all together, once mixed together, they are then activated. The activation then creates heat, and the heat in the pile or the group then, in most people's view, would just rot it down. It breaks down. That is the composting action. Then at the end, you end up with a material out of your composter or your compost bins or your compost pile. That material that comes out, what is its nutrient value and its use depends greatly on what was put in. So depending on the materials gone in, you can have a very different material at the end. The heat levels make a big difference. The hotter it is, the faster it breaks down. The hotter it gets too hot, it can destroy nutrients. If it doesn't get hot enough, it doesn't compost things. So, and also the length of time. Some systems can make compost very quickly. Other systems, often people will have 3 compost heaps in their garden, and it takes 3 years before you get back to the one to use to put in your garden. But what I am getting at with this is the material that you get as compost can be in great differences, be very variable. Whereas a growing medium is like going into the kitchen and cooking a meal from a recipe book. You take all the ingredients, and as long as you take the same ingredients and the same quantities and do the same things to them, you will always end up with the same product at the end. So a growing medium, you end up with a consistent material every time. Hence why seed mixes and composts that you buy in the garden centre are actually growing mediums. They're not compost. They've been put together, sometimes scientifically. FertileFibre was always tested on plants to see what made the differences, how long it kept them living for, and that. So, but hopefully that explains more why all these people for years have thought they've been buying compost from the garden centre, but they've actually been buying growing medium. And I feel that the compost growing medium issues that's been going on has clouded and made going peat-free more difficult for a lot of people, because they think that to go peat-free, they have to go from what they used to buy in the garden centre to buying a compost. But they don't, they're now buying a peat-free growing medium. So we've now developed FertileFibre, and our initial product was a multi-purpose one. That was 30 years ago. Now FertileFibre does a much bigger range, but the base range is still the same: multi-purpose, seed and potting. You can get others in the range. There's a vegan range which have multi-purpose seed and potting, and there's a biodynamic range of the same. There are other mixes, extra loam, houseplants and container ones. So, and you can have special mixes made to order as well. But going back to the multi-purpose, a lot of people choose multi-purpose because they just want to buy one bag, one product, which is very good. You can use it for your seeds. It's very good. Coir is excellent for the seeds. So, and you can use it as a potting for growing on young plants. It will grow young plants on very well. But because of its lower nutrient levels, lower than a potting, slightly higher than a seed, it means that if you use multi-purpose, you will have to feed your plants a little bit earlier. So the seed mix, how we recommend you buy, is if you want a few bags from FertileFibre, is buy a couple of bags of seed and then the rest as potting. Then you get the best of both worlds. You can do your seeds and cuttings in the seed mix, and then when your plants are ready, pot them up into the potting mix, and they'll have loads of plant food to grow on. The seed mix, which has been best buy for the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023, with the multi-purpose not far behind it, is really, really good because coir is great for root growth. So the seeds germinate, they grow really good roots, and it's nice and easy because the air porosity, the openness of the coir allows that really easy root growth. Now, when you get to the potting has a few extra substrates, extra bits of material, composted bark and things added to it so that it can grow a wider range of plants. So it's got a buffering action. The composted bark's a little bit lower on the pH. So, and they really do well in that. You will notice when you first pot up plants in the potting that they don't seem to be growing for the first week. But if you could look through the pot, you would see that it's encouraging so much root growth that the roots grow before the top. Then when the top gets going, it's got the roots to pull the slow release nutrients out of the compost, and you get a much healthier plant. I've said on numerous occasions about a wide range of plants, so I thought I would give you an idea of the wide range of plants that the cottage herbery grows. Herbs, obviously, such as parsley, dill and chives. Shrubby herbs, rosemary and sage, savoury. Damp lovers like angelica, lovage and bistort. Dry loving plants, oyster plant, oregano, thymes. We grow trees, 5 different varieties of myrtle and bay, succulents, aloe vera, and a few cacti. Then there's greedy vegetables like lettuce, tomatoes, salad crops, long-term veg, perennial kale, beans, artichokes, cottage garden, lobelia, geums, geraniums, bulbs, alliums, gladioli, exotic plants, cardamom, Myogi ginger, and a few annuals like Ami, cornflower, and marigolds. So you can see we've managed to grow all of those in the FertileFibre over the last 40 odd years we've been going. If you want your FertileFibre, your mix, to become more specific for the plants you want to grow, and you know that there's things that you can add that your plants like, there's things like if you've got really good homemade compost, you can use that to bulk it out. But don't put too much in, don't go too high a percentage, because you will upset the nutrient balance, or you could dilute the nutrient balance too much. The other thing that you can add is loam. Loam's a buffer in action, and it helps the plants to grow and give you that wide range. If you do use loam, sterilized loam is probably the best to go for, because then you're not introducing any weeds into the compost. Composted bark is also a very good substrate to add. This will help lower the pH and also can be used to encourage drainage. If you use lumpy bark, you get more drainage. If you don't need the drainage, you can use fines or much smaller bark in there, which mix in a lot better than the lumpy bark and affect the pH much faster, because you're adding smaller bits rather than big chunky bits. So the other thing, if you're looking for drainage, is grit. Grit will give you good drainage there, but also coir being very, very light, grit will give you ballast. If you grow tall plants, or you have plants that you want to hold down in pots, the grit gives that extra weight to hold it down. If you want to go the other way and you want to actually make it lighter, because you want your containers to be not too heavy to move around, or hanging baskets so they're not going to rip the bolts out the wall, you can use perlite or vermiculite. This is very good for roof gardens as well, where you want to reduce the weight of the material, because if you're doing a roof garden, you need a lot of material to put on the roof. If you do use vermiculite or perlite, always remember vermiculite is a natural product with a high pH. So if you have sensitive plants that are sensitive to pH, don't use vermiculite, use perlite, because it is inert and it will not affect the pH values. So finally, water. Water is the most important thing to plants, basically. And it is water that you will find is the different management thing if you have not used coir in the past. Coir, it is easier to put water in than it is to take it out. So the key word is little and often. Don't soak anything unless it likes to be really wet. If you have plants that like to be really wet, you can soak and soak and soak. To give you a demonstration of the water holding capacity of coir, if you take the little blocks that are readily available, if you put the water to that, you can fill a standard washing up bowl to overflowing from that little block. If you take the bales, normally a 5 kilo bale is a standard bale size. One of those will fill a wheelbarrow to overflowing. And that is their optimum water level now. But if you added another watering can of water to the wheelbarrow, it would just soak it up. It is very, very easy to get that water in. So avoid overwatering as much as possible. So I hope all the information I've given you will help you to become peat-free in the near future.